Hey everyone, Ashley Mailloux and David Aragona here with the Daily Racing Form. Stakes preview time this weekend out at Oaklawn Park. We know that Saturday there's a ton of great racing across the country, but Oaklawn has their eyes on some Derby points, and that being in the Southwest. This is a $1 million race this year, David. And in terms of the field, we're going to see 10 here go a mile and a 16th on the main track. And you have a little bit of everything. I feel, though, eyes are really going to be on two horses, gaming on the inside for trainer Bob Baffert, as well as the 7 Patch Adams, who was pretty impressive last out.
Yeah, it feels like things are starting to get a little bit more serious on the Derby Trail with this Southwest coming up. Gaming, as you said, obviously a major player from last year, one of the top 2-year-olds in the country. And Pat Adams garnered so much hype off that impressive maiden victory last time. He'll be trying the 2 turns for the first time.
It's going to be an interesting thing to see with horses like that stretching out in distance. And if we take a look at the time form US pace projections here, not necessarily a fast pace, but on the outside, the 10 Speed King could certainly be involved. He's shown speed in both of his starts, most recently in the Spring Aboard Mile. And you mentioned Patch Adams. He is stretching out in distance in another one. He's been close to very quick fractions, if not even on the lead early.
Yeah, I could see this pace being contested. I mean, even Gaming breaking from the inside has to leave for position. He's not some need the lead front runner, but Bob Baffert typically instructs his riders to get out of there and get forward and see what happens with others that want to go to the outside. Speed King, as you mentioned, he's a horse that is likely to go from his far outside post position, but American Promise has been aggressive in his races since the blinkers have come on, and obviously Patch Adams will be in the mix. So I could see this being a legitimate pace.
If it is a legitimate pace, look for the number 6 Sandman, who does have the late pace flag attached to him. He was rolling late last time out when he was able to pick up his second career victory. We'll kick things off here, though, with one of the big names, the number 1 at Gaming, and we'll take a look at one of his performances. We won't go back to Los Al, but we'll go back to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, where he's just second best behind his stablemate Citizen Bull. And I think kind of looking at the test that he had here, he obviously was a grade 1 winner, David, going into this, but he was one that had to stretch out in distance, and he got a career best buyer in that effort.
Yeah, obviously ran very well this day. The 95 buyer that he got makes him the horse to beat coming in here. You do want to note, though, that Breeders' Cup Juvenile was a race that was affected by the poor start of East Avenue, and it really moderated the pace and allowed the Bob Baffert duo to just control the fractions up front. And I think it benefited Gaming because he was so much with the race flow. He obviously came back and disappointed last time in the Los Al Futurity as the 1-2 favorite. When I was watching that replay, I noticed he took a really awkward step out of the gate, almost like he stepped on himself. And I wonder if that sort of took away from his finish that day. Feels like a good sign that Bob Baffert is shipping this horse across the country for this early season Derby prep. Appears to be working well. I'm expecting him to run well in this spot.
Yep. You mentioned Bob Baffert to look for his 7th Southwest if Gaming is able to find himself in the winner's circle. The number 2 Publisher, he's a maiden in here, a son of American Pharaoh, who he's been close in those 4 efforts. He's tried a couple of tracks now, David, but just tough to see what's going to make the difference come Saturday at Oaklawn.
Yeah, Maiden stepping up against winners here. He is coming off his career best buyer by far when he got that 92 chasing home American Promise, who's also in this field. That number was such an outlier for those 2 horses. I was trying to find some reason why they could have improved so much. It was a muddy track at Oaklawn. It was the last race of the day. They both rode the rail every step of the way. I was trying to see if there was a rail bias that day. It didn't really seem like that was the case. Maybe this is just a horse that took a step forward. He's certainly bred to do so. His damn Indian Pride was a really talented horse from the Chad Brown barn. Just feels like they're still asking a lot of his horse in his first try against winners.
The 3 Monet's Magic, this one for Ben Colebrook and Midway Racing. A little intriguing, in my opinion. A horse that seems to have gained confidence from that maiden score 2 back. He followed that up while facing winners with another win, and that came locally at Oaklawn Park. I think something that you've mentioned with Publisher and off track, a lot of these horses have that experience over the off going, and I think the difference between Monet's Magic and a couple of others is he got a really nice trip where he was able to close from more towards the back of the pack and show that late run. And while his buyer took a little bit of a step backward, I think you can say that his last 2 by far his best going into this race.
Yeah, this horse is finally getting some respect. I mean, he went off at gigantic prices in like the first 5 starts of his career and just kept improving all the time up until those last couple of victories. He's actually coming out of a race on the exact same day that Publisher ran. And another one that kind of rode the rail for a lot of his trips. So if you think the rail was an advantage that day, maybe it boosted Monet's Magic a little bit. He's going to have to run faster coming in here, but he will benefit from any pace that develops.
Up next is the 4 Tis Tastic. This one for trainer Steve Asmussen, a son of Tiz the Law, who curious to get your thoughts thoughts, David, to me is interesting from the fact that his two wins, they've been on turf and they've been at Kentucky Downs, which is that odd configuration. And I feel like he's ran well in his last two, but for me, maybe a little even in those final stages.
Yeah, switching back to the dirt, he ran just fine, picking up pieces in the street sense and the Kentucky Jockey Club. I thought he had a tougher trip in the street sense because he had to check a little bit into the clubhouse turn and just kind of stayed on at the end behind Sovereignty. He was very impressive. Last time the Kentucky Jockey Club featured a slow pace, he kind of rode the pocket towards the inside and again was a little one paced through the late stages. I won't be surprised when he has another step forward in him. I just view him as more of a player to pick up the pieces again in this spot.
The number 5 is trained by Kenny McPeak, who won the Southwest last year with Mystic Dan. This is Render Judgment, a son of Blame, who's going to wear blinkers for the first time in his career. He was able to graduate 3 starts back at Churchill, going a mile and a 16th against a couple of faces that he'll face again, American Promise being one of them. But in his last two, I felt like his race at Churchill after that, he took a little bit of a step backward. And more recently, he was an okay third down at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, I'll be a little bit forgiving of the gun runner because he did stumble pretty significantly at the start of that race, but after that, he got right into the pocket, followed, a horse who was setting a slow pace and just really didn't have any kick through the stretch. So he's going to have to take a pretty significant step forward against a field of this quality.
The 6 Sandman, he's caught my eye, and I think that performance last time at Oaklawn Park makes him a huge contender this Saturday. We'll take a look at that race at Oaklawn. And, we've talked about a couple of horses maybe being forward, and we even have a couple of horses that still to come that might be forward from the gate. I just wonder if there's an honest pace. A horse like Sandman, does he have the ability to close late? He was able to do this back on December 13th, and I thought he was a little bit green. I think we've seen this a couple of times from him, David, to this point. You just wonder if he sort of figures it out. Can he continue to kind of build on what he's been able to do in those last two?
Yeah, it's never really a surprise when those gray sons of Tapit don't have their minds on running for the entirety of a race. And it seemed like that was the case last time. As you mentioned, he was kind of losing some ground around the far turn. But once he got clued in and Christian Torres really sent him forward, he made a really impressive run to get to the outside of the top of the stretch like we saw and close that field down. And I just love the way this horse lengthens his stride coming to the wire. It feels like he's kind of just winding up going the mile distance, and he's going to appreciate any added ground that he can get. That 89 buyer puts him in the mix here, and I won't be surprised when there's another step forward coming for him.
The 7 Patch Adams is trained by Brad Cox, was third on his debut, but that was going 6 furlongs at Keeneland. And just his second career start, we saw him take a huge step forward. He was much the best, winning that maiden special weight at Churchill. He seemed to benefit from the added distance. And obviously, it's Brad Cox. He knows what to do with these horses. He tries to kind of keep them separated on the Triple Crown Trail as they try to get their points. And looking at his works, he just seems like a horse that's going to really appreciate the 2 turns.
Yeah, this horse's merits are pretty obvious on paper, so I'll just discuss some potential negatives with Patch Adams. First of all, the Brad Cox barn has been pretty cold so far at the Oaklawn meet, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he doesn't really have the same string at Oaklawn that he's had in the past. A lot of horses are shipping in from Fairgrounds or from Payson Park in Florida, where he's keeping a string this year, where Patch Adams is coming from. And also, when you take a look back at the 98 buyer that Patch Adams earned last time for that victory at Churchill Downs, as visually impressive as it was, I don't think there was a whole lot behind him. And horses that have come back out of that race, when you look up the PPs and Formulator, have significantly regressed in their subsequent starts. Second place finisher ran 16 points lower. Third place finisher ran 30 points lower. And the fifth place finisher came back to run 21 points lower in the next start. So I wonder if that performance is all that it's cracked up to be. And trying 2 turns for the first time, I'm just not keen to take a short price on this horse.
I think you bring up great points there with the short price, right? When you're kind of price shopping in a race like this, 5-2 is really not appealing, especially for these connections. While they have been cold at the meet, they typically take money, and sometimes you have to look elsewhere. Then you have the Flavian Pratt factor as well to kind of maybe weigh this one down a little bit in terms of the price. The 8 American Promise was able to graduate last time out, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the race. Obviously, the buyer is eye-catching. He did it in front-end fashion. But my concern is the track that day. It was an off track, and I wonder if that flattered him a little bit and really helped him kind of carry himself on the front end.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what to make of his last race because if you take it at face value, he's a major player in here off that 95 buyer last time. And, you look at the entire day, and sometimes you might not want to trust speed figures from days that have a lot of rain or future muddy tracks. But you can compare it to route races that were run right beforehand, including a stakes race, and it just stacks up well, and the number looks legitimate. You see that there was a 19 length gap behind the top two finishers back to the rest. So the number does track for those horses. When you watch the race, this horse actually was losing some focus at the end. There were some tire tracks across the racetrack from the starting gate, and he actually put his ears up and looked like he was maybe going to jump them before he kind of got his mind back on running. So he's still figuring things out, and I think there might be further upside for this horse. We'll see what price he is.
The 9 is his stablemate, also trained by Dwayne Lucas, a maiden in this field who's yet to hit the board in those 3 outings. And I will say he's taken a little bit of a step forward in terms of figures with each of his races. They've also stretched him out from 5 to 6 to a mile and a 16th. But in terms of what we've seen race day, I didn't love what I've seen, but those 2 works, they are a step up, and one has been since he last raced.
It's never a surprise when DeWayne Lucas takes a shot in these races with big prices. He's coming out of a better than expected performance in the Smarty Jones, where he was kind of right there at the end to be 4th at 28-1. But the bottom line is this is a way tougher race than the Smarty Jones. So I think he has his work cut out for him again.
And then to round out the field is the number 10, Speed King, who I guess was named correctly. He's shown a little bit of early foot in his 2 starts. And we'll take a look at his most recent performance. It was in the Springboard Mile. Not an easy task. You're stretching out in distance. You're shipping away from Oaklawn. You're going to Remington Park. But I thought overall this was a really nice performance. He didn't necessarily take a huge step up in terms of his numbers, but it flatters him that the horse that beat him, Cold Battle, would go on to win the Smarty Jones.
Yeah, I think Cold Battle is a really nice horse and a good story going on towards the Kentucky Derby. Speed King was pretty game trying to battle back when that horse came to him. I was looking up the pace figures in Timeform US for this race, and they're all color-coded in red for the Springboard Mile, indicating that was a faster than usual pace. And Speed King held on pretty well to be second that day. This is obviously a tougher spot, but if he's going to be near that 15-1 morning line, that's arguably a good price on him.
All right, that's the field for the $1 Million Southwest this Saturday out at Oaklawn Park. It's race 10 of 12 on the program. I'm curious to see who you use on the top spot, David. And we're really not creative here. We have the same top 2. We look to Sandman. I think the thought process might be that he might be able to close from off of it.
Well, I don't know if we're not creative. I think we're creative in the same direction together with Sandman, who's not going to go favored in this race. He'll probably be the 3rd choice. I just like this horse's development. I know he disappointed in a couple of stakes late last year, but they just seemed like they were learning experiences for him. And I saw him take sort of that mental step forward last time in the allowance victory. So I hope he's ready to fulfill that potential. But my main takeaway in this race is that I'm against the number 7, Patch Adams, and I'll let him beat me.
Yeah, I'll use him a little further down in the 3rd spot. I think my thought process here, gaming does look tough based on the resume, based on Bob Baffert's credentials when he ships into Oaklawn, but we know the price is going to be short. And honestly, I didn't love that performance at Los Al. There's just so many things about it that I didn't like. So looking to the horse, the same horse as you, the 6 Sandman, to get the job done. 6184 for David, 6173 for me. It's race number 10 at Oaklawn Park this Saturday. Best of luck.